In the small, quiet town of Hyde, Greater Manchester, there was a family doctor who everyone seemed to adore. Dr. Harold Shipman. He was a pillar of the community, a man people trusted with their lives, their secrets, and their deepest vulnerabilities. He would visit his elderly patients at home, sit with them, listen to their worries, but behind this mask of compassion, behind the reassuring smile and the gentle bedside manner, a terrible darkness was hiding. A secret so monstrous it remains almost impossible to comprehend. This trusted physician was living a double life. He wasn't just a healer, he was a killer. His patients, mostly elderly women who lived alone, saw him as a comfort. They welcomed him into their homes, never suspecting that the man offering a cup of tea might also be carrying a lethal injection in his medical bag. To understand how Harold Shipman got away with his crimes for so long, you have to understand the man he pretended to be. Born in Nottingham, in 1946, his early life was marked by a significant event, the death of his mother Vera from lung cancer. He was fascinated by the power of the morphine doctors administered to ease her pain. After his mother's death, he threw himself into his studies, eventually gaining a place at Leeds School of Medicine. He graduated in 1970 and began his career as a junior doctor. He seemed on the surface to be a perfectly capable physician. In 1974, he joined a medical practice in Todmorden, West Yorkshire. It was here that the first signs of trouble appeared. He was caught forging prescriptions for the painkiller pethidine. By 1977, he was back in business, taking a post as a general practitioner in the town of Hyde, near Manchester. This is where he would truly establish himself. Over the next 2 decades, he built a reputation as an exemplary doctor. Unlike other, busier doctors, Shipman always had time for them. He made house calls, a practice that was becoming increasingly rare. He became a single-handed practitioner in 1993, opening his own surgery on Market Street. He worked alone, without partners or colleagues looking over his shoulder. He was the sole authority. For years, the deaths of Harold Shipman's patients went unnoticed. They were, after all, mostly elderly, and many had underlying health conditions. When an old person dies suddenly at home, it is a sad event, but not necessarily a suspicious one. Dr. Shipman was always there to sign the death certificate, provide a plausible cause of death, and offer comfort to the grieving family. The first concrete suspicion did not come from a patient's family, but from a fellow professional. In March 1998, Dr. Linda Reynolds, a GP at a nearby practice in Hyde, became concerned. She noticed an unusually high death rate among Shipman's patients. More than that, she saw a disturbing similarity in the cases. Many of his patients seemed to be dying at home during the day, and they were often found fully clothed, sitting in their chairs. It just didn't seem right. Dr. Reynolds was so worried that she contacted the local coroner, John Pollard, to voice her fears. The coroner in turn passed these concerns on to the Greater Manchester Police. An investigation was launched, but it was discreet and, ultimately, deeply flawed. The police team assigned to the case was inexperienced in this type of complex investigation. The investigation was closed in April 1998. Shipman was told he was in the clear. In the 3 months that followed the failed investigation, Harold Shipman went on to kill 3 more people. When you look at the deaths in isolation, it's perhaps understandable why no one raised the alarm sooner. The genius of Shipman's evil was that he hid his crimes within the natural rhythm of life and death. He chose his victims carefully. They were almost all elderly women, many of whom lived alone. This demographic meant their deaths were less likely to be questioned. The true horror of Shipman's actions only becomes clear when you step back and look at the data. When investigators finally began to analyze the statistics from his practice, a horrifying pattern started to emerge. The death rate among his patients was incredibly high, far higher than any other practice in the area. Furthermore, the circumstances of the deaths were strangely consistent. A vast number of his patients died between the hours of 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. This was often just after they had received a home visit from Dr. Shipman. They were usually found fully clothed, sitting upright in a chair as if they had just been talking to someone. This pattern was too neat, too consistent to be a coincidence. Another key part of the pattern was the drug he used, diamorphine, the medical name for heroin. It is a powerful painkiller, the same drug he had watched doctors give to his mother all those years ago. When administered in a lethal dose, it swiftly causes respiratory depression, leading to a quiet, peaceful-looking death. But he was not using it for comfort. He was using it as a tool for murder. If it weren't for a single act of greed, Harold Shipman might have continued his killing spree for much longer. The case that finally brought him down was that of Kathleen Grundy. She was an 81-year-old woman, a former mayoress of Hyde. She was vibrant, wealthy, and in excellent health. On June 24, 1998, she was found dead in her home. The bombshell came a few weeks later. Kathleen Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, was a solicitor. She was handling her mother's estate and was shocked to discover a second crudely typed will had surfaced. This new will left the vast majority of her mother's considerable fortune, around £386,000, directly to Dr. Harold Shipman. The document was riddled with errors and looked incredibly suspicious. It was signed, but the signature looked clumsy, nothing like her mother's usual elegant handwriting. The document stated that her mother wished to be cremated, which also seemed odd. Angela Woodruff knew something was terribly wrong. She went to the police, armed with her suspicions about the will and the strange circumstances of her mother's sudden death. This was the mistake that Shipman could not undo. His greed had made him sloppy. The forged will was a tangible piece of evidence that could be investigated. The case of Kathleen Grundy became the key that would unlock the door to Shipman's secret world. They decided to exhume her body. With the catalyst of Kathleen Grundy's suspicious will, the police investigation began in earnest. The first and most critical step was to exhume Mrs. Grundy's body to perform a post-mortem examination. The results were shocking and conclusive. The toxicology report revealed that she had fatal levels of diamorphine in her system. This was the smoking gun they needed. Armed with this forensic evidence, the police arrested Harold Shipman on September 7, 1998, on suspicion of murder. The investigation expanded rapidly. They seized his computers, his medical records, and a typewriter from his surgery. The typewriter was a crucial find. Forensic experts were able to prove that it was the exact machine used to type Kathleen Grundy's forged will. The police now had a motive, financial gain, a weapon, diamorphine, and the tool used to create the fraudulent document. The police began the mammoth task of reviewing the deaths of hundreds of Shipman's other patients. They started to exhume more bodies one by one, unearthing a silent chorus of victims. They discovered that he had been systematically altering his patients' medical records after their deaths, adding false entries about symptoms they never had to justify the cause of death he had invented. Throughout the entire investigation and his subsequent interviews, Shipman remained arrogant and uncooperative. He denied everything. He portrayed himself as the victim of a conspiracy, showing no remorse, no emotion, no sympathy for the families of the patients he had killed. The trial of Harold Shipman began at Preston Crown Court on October 5, 1999. It was one of the most sensational trials in modern British legal history. Shipman faced charges for the murder of 15 of his female patients, all of whom had died between 1995 and 1998. The prosecution methodically laid out its case. They presented the damning toxicology reports from the exhumed bodies showing the presence of fatal diamorphine overdoses. Family members of the victims took the stand, one after another, to tell their stories. They spoke of their healthy, lively mothers and grandmothers who had died suddenly and unexpectedly after a visit from their trusted doctor. Shipman himself took the stand to defend his actions. He was articulate and confident, but under cross-examination his arrogance became his downfall. The jury listened intently for nearly 4 months as the prosecution built its meticulous case. The evidence was complex, but the story it told was simple and horrifying. On January 31, 2000, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury returned with its verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreman stood to deliver the decision. Guilty on all 15 counts of murder, Harold Shipman's mask of respectability was finally and irrevocably torn away.
He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences. The judge told Shipman, "You are a wicked and evil man. You enjoyed the exercise of power over life and death, and you have betrayed the trust of your patients."
Harold Shipman never confessed to his crimes. He never offered an explanation or an apology. On January the 13th, 2004, the day before his 58th birthday, Harold Shipman was found dead in his cell. He had taken his own life. The Harold Shipman case sent shockwaves through the entire British healthcare system. It was a national trauma. The public's faith in a profession that had been held in the highest regard was deeply shaken. Following the trial, the government launched a massive public inquiry, known as the Shipman Inquiry, to determine the full extent of his crimes and to understand how he had been able to get away with murder for so long. Its final report, published in 2002, concluded that Shipman was responsible for the deaths of at least 215 of his patients and possibly as many as 260. The inquiry confirmed him as Britain's most prolific serial killer. The victims were predominantly elderly women, the youngest being a 41-year-old man. The true number will never be known for sure. In the wake of the scandal, there was an urgent call for reform. These recommendations have led to some of the most significant changes in British medical practice in a generation. The procedures for certifying deaths were completely overhauled. The rules around cremation were tightened. A new system of regular revalidation was introduced, requiring all doctors to prove periodically that they are fit to practice. The aim was to foster a culture of openness and accountability, ensuring that doctors are no longer able to operate in complete isolation, immune from the scrutiny of their peers. While the story of Harold Shipman is one of unimaginable horror, it also serves as a permanent, chilling reminder of why vigilance, oversight, and a culture of questioning authority are so critically important in the world of medicine.